Welcome back, Illumineers. So today's video is going to be an Amber Steel Aggro list that I'm working on. I've been playing for the last couple of weeks. It's incredibly fun, and with the current meta, or the way the meta is currently shaping, it can go under a lot of the meta decks. There's obviously still some decks that you're going to struggle against. For instance, Purple Steel is one that you're going to struggle against, as it's just very low to the ground. And with the strategy we're implementing, they can just recover as they have a lot of drawing options. However, if you do run into a lot of Sapphire in your local meta, then this is a deck that you can definitely run under, as this deck is very fast. So to get things started, let's start off with the 1-drops, and then we'll go through that, and then at the end we'll start talking about a couple lines you could take with the deck, some preferred lines. But without further ado, let's jump right into the deck tech itself. For this particular deck, you kind of want to cheat out your bigger characters as early as you can. So the deck is kind of built in that regard. But to start things off, we're running 4 copies of Mulan. Mulan is great as it helps you filter through the deck, as we are running quite a few uninkable cards in this build. We're also running 4 copies of Rhino. Now, Rhino is still very viable in this particular strategy, as this one in particular, you play it, you give one of your opponent's characters -1 for that turn, and it often can protect your aggro cards. For instance, if you have a Nala on board, playing a Rhino can just assure that you get your 3 quests in, and then you can also quest for 2 the following turn, as it probably won't be able to kill it, but then we're going to have 4 copies of Pluto. Pluto is great as it's a key piece to this particular build, as it will help us cheat out cards as early as possible. And then we are running 3 copies of Elanway. Elanway is a nice addition. We're only running 3, which is okay for this build. Elanway helps your characters punch up, and that is essential when you're running into decks like dogs and other aggro builds. As mentioned earlier, the strategy for this particular build is to get your bigger characters out early, and Lantern is essential for doing so. We will be running 4 copies of Lantern in this deck. In many cases, Lantern is your ideal turn 2, as you can play Lantern and then tap it to play a 1-drop as well. So you're still not losing tempo in regards to your board, but it also just helps you cheat out your bigger characters. We are running 4 copies of Nala. Nala is still great as it helps you run away with a lot of games, especially once we establish our board and we have so much of them to deal with. Nala is just a target, so they have to go after Nala first, as it does quest for 3, and it opens up the field for you to quest a little bit more with the other characters and have them survive longer. Next, we are also running 4 copies of Mowgli. Mowgli is essential for this type of deck, as we are very vulnerable to cards like Spooky Sight, MMS, and Under the Sea. So playing a Mowgli at the correct time can really save you games. Mowgli is not your ideal turn 2, as most of these decks are not, or they're hard mulliganing away from having actions in their opening hand because of cards like Mowgli. So ideally you want to play Mowgli around 3 or 4, that way they're probably looking for an answer as they see you are running aggro. So they'll dig for it, and you can just rip their board wipes away before they can really do any damage to you. We're also going to be running 4 copies of Doc. Doc is just a staple, as this deck you'll run out of your hand very fast, and Doc will help you replenish that. Now, for a little bit of spice, we are going to be running 4 copies of Stitch. As you will see later on, we are running the Rockstar Stitch for this deck, as it's just incredible, especially if you're able to get it out very early with Lantern and Pluto. You can really run away with games fast if you can establish the Rockstar Stitch early, and having a shift target really helps you do that. Alright, so starting off the 3-drops is one of my favorite cards this set. It's Raja. This is a 3/4 bodyguard that costs 3. Now, if you can get your Pluto out turn 1, you can get this out as early as to turn 2, which is incredible, as this is a very strong card and it's very troublesome for your opponent to deal with. As we have a lot of low-cost characters in this particular build, we're going to be running 4 copies of Lady. This will just help you cheat out the cards as early as possible and as many as possible so you can flood the board and just overwhelm your opponent, especially with a lot of these slower decks. And similarly to the way in which Mowgli is working for this deck, a well-timed Pete can really make the difference, and we're just going to be running 2 of them. But if your opponent has like a Prince Philip board and they're you know what's coming next. You know the MMS is coming. You can play a Pete, stall them for a turn, and hopefully gain so much lore that it's hard for your opponent to recover from that. And that's just kind of the idea of having 2 Petes in the deck alongside the 4 Mowglis. At 4, our lone 4-drop is 4 copies of Rhino. We are running the 1-drop Rhino, so having the 4-drop just feels right. And this is still a hard card to work around. It helps you check a lot of the aggro builds early on. So if you can play your Rhino on 1, you see that the aggro, you can shift this out and start clearing the board as fast as you can. It's just a good card to get that done. You don't have to worry about aggro as much if you have Rhino in your deck. And that's why we're running 4 copies of it. Alright, so we did mention Rockstar Stitch at the beginning. We don't have any 5-drops, so we're skipping right to 6. We're running 4 copies of Rockstar Stitch and 1 copy of Goliath. Now this is the idea I got from watching Wonderland play this build a little bit back, a couple weeks back I believe. But Rockstar Stitch is so good in this deck, and I'll show you why at the end of the video. But yeah, this is our draw engines right here, and you want to get these out as early as possible. Especially, we're only running 1 copy of Goliath, and I think that's okay. Maybe you can run more if you choose, but Goliath will help you disrupt your opponent's hand if you can get this card out early enough, as well as help you draw cards and keep drawing cards. And if you're running aggro, drawing cards is essential. Rockstar Stitch, if you can get this out early on in a game, you can really run away with the game, as we have so many low-cost characters that you can just like flood the board very, very fast. Alright, and for our non-character cards, we're running 4 copies of Strength of a Raging Fire, as well as 2 copies of Search for Clues. Strength of a Raging Fire has been around for quite some time. We don't really have to get into that. It's obviously very good, as we have many shift targets that can come out early and help us play this card by singing it. But Search for Clues is a little bit of spice that I added into the deck. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this card, it reads, the player or players with the most cards in their hand choose and discard 2 cards. If you have a detective character in play, you may gain 1 lore. Now, I like this card. Obviously, on the play, this card might be not as great, as you're just going to want to go fast, which is totally fine. But if you're on the draw, Search for Clues is essential. You can really disrupt your opponent's hand, especially if you get lucky with the Mowgli. You can play a Mowgli, rip something out of their hand, you can flood the board, and then on turn 4 you can play Search for Clues, and ideally have your opponent discard 2 cards, as there's not many instances where your opponent's going to have more cards in hands than you, or you're going to have the same as them. You're always going to have less with the way this deck is built, and that's why Search for Clues is essential. You can disrupt your opponent's hand and really take advantage of that. Now, with the way this deck has been built, you want to be able to cheat out your bigger characters as early as possible. So ideally, you want to find a Pluto and a Lantern after your Mulligan. If you can, go for 2 Plutos, especially if you have a Goliath or a Rockstar Stitch in hand. And then you can have a line like this. So turn 1, you could do Pluto. Turn 2, you can do establish your lantern. Use lantern to establish Pluto on 2. That way you're still on tempo. And then on turn 3, you can use both Plutos and your lantern, as well as 3 ink, to establish your Goliath or Stitch. Now, obviously, this is an ideal situation, and it's not always going to go like this, but this is just a line that you can see, and a line you can actually mulligan for. If you can establish this early on, as early as turn 3, you're really going to run away with the games, especially on the play. As mentioned previously, if you're on the play, you want to go fast and flood the board as fast as possible. This deck lets you do that. And if you're on the draw, you want to disrupt your opponent's hand as much as you can using cards like Mowgli and Search for Clues. If you like this deck, let me know in the comment sections what you think and what you'd change. And let me know if you're going to give this deck a try. On to the next one.